Welcome back to MFTF Quick Guides, and today we'll be looking at suite files. So first off, if you're not familiar with a suite, these are located within a directory in an MFTF directory. So as normal, we have our Magento module. Here we're looking at module store. And within the test MFTF directory, where we'll find our usual test pages and sections, we also have the possibility for a suite directory. This won't always be in every module that is MFTF coverage. Not every module has a suite, but where we do, it's with its own suite directory. And then in there, you can have a suite.xml file or multiple. So what a suite file is. A suite file allows us to define in a similar XML format a suite of tests. What that means is we define a scope of tests that should be run together. So we can say all tests are with this annotation or of this type. Now, what we use these for, what's the purpose or point of using a suite? Well, first, it allows some better test organization in our output, our reporting, and our collection of tests. We can group these all together, and it lets us organize these a little more. That's great. But functionally, what it allows us to do is to control all of the conditions and preconditions for a set of tests. So what that means is each suite file, like a test, can have before and after actions. And the before actions here may be something like using the bin Magento config set command to set up the instance with some configuration value you require, or setting some data that you need. Usually it's using those Magento CLI actions to set, for example, a config setting, to turn free shipping on or off, or to turn some value that relates to an extension you're writing on, so that you can ensure that when this set of tests run together, that they have the Magento instance in the correct state. It's worth saying as well in terms of your own automation and how we do things here in Magento and how things will be with eventual MFTF support in Magento Marketplace. The safest and most reliable way to write tests is to assume nothing about the environment. You can't assume that any configs are set a particular way, any data is already provided for you. So you must always explicitly set up the instance in the way that you want it, and then in your after steps, clean up those as well to set them back. So let's have a quick look at this test file, this suite file in front of us here. So as we say, it lives in a suite directory. It's a very similar format to others. So here we would have suite name, and it just takes a single name. And that's how we'll reference this. It has an include block, and this include block is taking a group. So what that's doing is saying this suite will include any test that matches this value. So it has a group annotation and then matches this string for that group annotation. What we can do as well is also use an exclude. So we can also exclude, for example, group name equals not this. And then that will catch any tests that first it have this group value. So it'll run the include first, collect all of these tests, but then from that set of tests, go and exclude any that also match this. So let's remove the exclude for now to make this a little clearer. So as well as group name, we can also match on test name. So we can directly call individual tests in this as well. Our favorite, the admin login test. And now what this will do is collect any tests that either have the group name, secure storefront URL, or the test name. So this will collect all of these plus this. So that's group and test. We can use the same and exclude by group or test. Now, spoke about having these before and after actions. So they sit just like in a test that we have before actions. So for example, we could have Magento CLI actions here, and then do whatever we'd like with that. So we can take a Magento CLI action. Let's take an example one here. Okay, so here we can set this in a before, and then we can also do the same thing in an after block, except of course set this to 0, call instead of enable, call this disable. Again, these are all just taking the same step keys and everything else like you use in test. So here, what this suite would do, for example, is collect all of the tests that have the group secure storefront URL and the test that has the name admin login test. It's going to collect those up. Then it's going to run this precondition. So config set. In this case, it's manage stock 1. This is not really relevant to these tests, but just as an example, we'll show. It's going to run this CLI command. If the CLI command runs successfully, so the before precondition is met, it will then run all of these tests, and either upon all test completion or upon failure of any test, it will then run the cleanup after step as well. So essentially what this allows us to do is to consolidate our setup actions for a set of tests. So for example, if you're an extension developer and part of your extension, say, connects to a API or SaaS service that you're running to collect data in, well, that configuration would need set. Let's say you have to set an API key in an admin panel to verify that it can connect to the service, and then that will load data in that your Magento functionality acts upon. And we obviously want to test all of this. So what we could do there is write our own suite file and have the suite file collect all of your tests, for example, by them having the same group, my extension. Have that as your group value, collect them all up in this suite with an include group, and then run that setup, logging into admin, going to the correct panel, filling in whatever it is, your API key, saving that value out, and now all of your tests can run in the state, in this suite state that Magento is set up with your correct API key set and saved and all the functionality ready to go, and then clean that up after so that other tests that won't have taken into account that this additional functionality, this additional data loaded from an API isn't going to break those further regression tests as well. So that's what that allows us to do, and it's very useful for that. So running suites is actually a little different. Suites within the framework are a special type of group. So what that means is we use the run group command to run a suite, and we run it by its name value. So if we do vendor bin MFTF run group secure storefront URL suite, which matches this name, this will execute the full suite. However, there is a catch in running tests that belong to a suite. This test, admin login test that I've added here, well, that's now in the scope of this suite. Because of that, you will not be able to run this test independently. What that means is you can no longer do run test admin login test. This will fail. Attempting to run this test that's in a suite scope will result in an error. So we can see here, cannot reference test configuration for generation without accompanying suite. So in fact, it'll fail in the generation before the test run. It won't even get to running this test. The reason for this is that if a test, either be its name or because it's part of a matching group, is within a suite, the assumption there, because again, remember, suite's primary use and most useful case is that it allows you to consolidate your preconditions, these things you need set up, If a test here needs this precondition, there's no point running it without, because that should fail. If a test is in a suite, it's there because it needs this condition to run. Trying to run it without the suite means running it without the precondition, and a test without its precondition shouldn't be able to run, should be a failure. So we prevent that from happening. We can individually run that test, of course, by removing it from the suite. At that point, the test will successfully run. But of course, if that test truly does need this precondition, it will fail. So, in conclusion, suite files allow you to organize your tests together and consolidate their preconditions to ensure that the environment and the instance of Magento is properly configured for that set of tests, and the tests will only run when the preconditions are met. That allows us to both ensure that our tests will run in the right configuration, but also can help significantly improve performance of that test run, because if, for example, this group has 20 tests in it, instead of having to run your required setup 20 times, we only run it once, run all the tests, and then tear it down once. So you can see if you are writing a lot of tests that require a precondition, a suite can significantly help you there. That's it for the MFTF quick guide on suite files. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you join me next time.